So last week, I told you that Governor Ron DeSantis had sent migrants from Florida to Martha's Vineyard and also outside of Kamala Harris's house. And I talked about this and I said, look, this is him basically making some type of political gesture here. It's theater. This is basically him putting the ball, I think, in Joe Biden's court and Kamala Harris's court and saying, you wanted them to come here. Now I'm going to send it to these liberal states and let them deal with it. In reference to Martha's Vineyard, there has been a change. Now I'm going to show you the video that shows the response from people in Martha's Vineyard. And then I'm going to tell you about the update. Here we go.
Migrants to Martha's Vineyard bust in unannounced by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. The migrants were brought to Joint Base Cape Cod on Friday, and today the Baker administration says MEMA is working with other state agencies to provide clothing, food, and access to things like health care and legal services. Baker has officially activated 125 members of the National Guard as part of the effort. While volunteers and donations can't be accepted directly at the base, the state is saying that the immediate needs of those in the shelter are being met through existing resources.
Let me go ahead and play this video that shows the response from Martha's Vineyard, because I want to explain both sides of this, but I want you to also understand the level of hypocrisy here. So here we go.
So
what are the most difficult challenges right now?
The difficult challenges are we have, at some point in time, they have to move from here to somewhere else, right? We don't have the services to take care of 50 immigrants, and we certainly don't have housing. We're in a housing crisis as we are on this island, and so we can't house everyone here that lives here and works here. We don't have housing for 50 more people.
Yeah, that's not true. She said that we don't have the resources. We don't have enough housing. We can't house everyone here. We can't handle 50 migrants. That's not true. So let me tell you what Governor Baker did, and then I'm going to tell you why what she's saying is absolutely incorrect. Now let's go back in here. So here's the article. On Friday, the Commonwealth offered the migrants a voluntary transition from the Martha's Vineyard facility to Joint Base Cape Cod. State officials provided transportation to individuals and families from the island to a shelter on JBCC where there are different services to support urgent needs. The layout at JBCC allows organizers to create specific housing areas for families who will remain together as a unit, women and anyone with specific needs, including medical care. MEMA continues to collaborate closely with state agencies and nonprofit organizations to provide individuals and families with access to a variety of services, including clothing and hygiene kits, food and drink, assessment of needs, including ongoing transportation needs, access to healthcare, mental health, and crisis counseling services, access and technical capabilities to ensure ongoing access to legal services, case management for accessing temporary housing and educational services for children, bilingual staff, and interpreter services. The powerful response of the state and local agencies, including the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, the Massachusetts National Guard, the Massachusetts State Police, Dukes County, and Barnstable County, as well as state, local, and federal elected officials, along with MEMA. Okay. They have been moved to Cape Cod. This is what we're going to talk about, because there's two sides to this. And I think it's important that I talk about both. What you just heard her say in that video where she said, we don't have the resources and we don't have the housing. That's false. Let me tell you a little bit about Martha's Vineyard. Most of the people that live at Martha's Vineyard only live there during the summer. The majority of residents at Martha's Vineyard are not there during the off season. Right now, we are in the off season. This may be shocking to some of you who live in places like further south where it's probably still warm. If I call my parents in South Carolina, they're probably going to tell me it's still hot. Not so much here, except for the other day, which was random and weird. But it's the off season, which means the majority of the housing at Martha's Vineyard right now is vacant. Whoopsie. She didn't mention that part. So Governor Baker has stepped in and has moved them from Martha's Vineyard to Cape Cod. Now, let me tell you about Cape Cod. Cape Cod, unlike Martha's Vineyard, is easy to get to. You can drive to Cape Cod. Yes, there's still a lot of traffic, but you can drive there. You can't drive to Martha's Vineyard because you can't drive through an ocean. The only ways that you can get to Martha's Vineyard is by plane or by ferry. And if you're driving down to take the ferry, then you got to pay to put your car on the ferry. That's expensive. And then get you all the way over to Martha's Vineyard. Cape Cod has always been the more affordable option. Most people here who are working class, people who are poor, if they're going to go to the beach, they're going to pick Cape Cod over Martha's Vineyard because the Cape is more affordable. Now, granted, there's expensive spots on the Cape and stuff too, but you can go down there just for the day and come right back up. I've done that before too. The point that I'm trying to make is that Martha's Vineyard is expensive. This is where a lot of wealthy people live. To give you an idea, Barack Obama has a house at Martha's Vineyard. You ain't gonna see too many poor people or working class people living on Martha's Vineyard. You just don't. So some people on Twitter were criticizing this, and I was one of them. I'll show that tweet in just a second, because I had to call something out. And it's something I've been talking about for a long time that I've noticed here in Massachusetts. Some of these wealthy towns, some of these wealthy cities, they talk a good game when it comes to supporting certain alienable rights. They talk a good game when it comes to social justice. They talk a good game when it comes to diversity. But the moment it's in their backyard, they push it out. And they'll find excuses to do it, which is what she just did. You know, that's the liberal way of saying, I don't want you here. We don't have the housing. We don't have the resources. Lies. That's how liberals do it. They do it in a covert way. I'm going to show you what I posted. This is the one. I said, Martha's Vineyard's actions towards migrants just proves my point about elite liberals in Massachusetts. Most of the housing is vacant right now because it's not tourist season. Liberals here support the issues, but they don't want it in their backyard. I went on to say, I'm discussing this tonight. And I went on. I've seen this multiple times with residents in places like Newton, Weston, Dover-Sherburne, Concord, Lexington, on other issues such as housing and education. Now, the point that I want to point out, that people are coming back and they're saying, well, they weren't deported. They were just moved to Cape Cod. Never said they were deported. But I will say this. The wealthy people push them out. And I've seen this happen, and I'm going to give you the examples. I used to rent a room in a city here called Newton. Newton is 15 minutes outside of Boston. That was when I first moved here. I was in grad school. Just needed a place that was on the green line, that was cheap, so I could get to class, at least for the first month or so until I found an apartment and found roommates. The woman I rented the room from was very sweet, very nice. I hope she's well. But one of the things that I have noticed when I lived there is a lot of the wealthy liberals in Newton. This is a city, you've got like doctors and lawyers. Some of the MIT like professors live there, former mayors. Like, this is no cheap place to live. You can't buy a house there under $1 million, but you can rent there. You can rent rooms. You can rent like apartments with roommates. But I think they're trying to get some of that out too. Another story. Anywho, there's this program in Boston called the Mecca program. It's a busing education program. You can call it the education lottery. What happens is that students in Massachusetts, in the Boston area in particular, they have this opportunity to enter an education lottery. And if they win, if they're selected, they get the opportunity to go to one of the schools that they have on that list. So you have kids coming from inner city neighborhoods like Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, Jamaica Plain. They're usually Black students or Latino students, and they won the education lottery. So they get to go to the school in Newton, which Newton has great public schools. You don't have to go to a private school if you live in Newton. You get what I'm saying? The public schools are that great. So they get on a bus, and they're bused from Roxbury to Newton, to Weston, to Dover Sherburne, to some of those places I just mentioned there, so that they can go to the schools that have all the resources, the schools where Harvard and Yale recruit from. But then they get back on that bus and they go right back to their neighborhood, and they still have to deal with the issues and the struggles that they have in their neighborhood. There were some comments made when I lived in Newton by some of these liberal, I love gay people, everybody should be together, everybody should have equal opportunity, rich white people in Newton. They made these comments like, well, I feel so bad for those poor Black kids in Roxbury. It must be really difficult and tough. And I understand that they want a good education, but do we have to have so many of them here? Comments like that around me. That's an education example. Let me give you a housing example. At one point, the state was trying to find a way to help Black working class, Latino working class, and I say this because that's predominantly the people living in those neighborhoods, to be able to afford a home outside of Boston, to give them that opportunity to live in the suburban communities so that they don't have to hope that their child wins an education lottery to go to those schools. Sound great, right? They were talking about putting some type of affordable housing or in those areas so that those kids have that opportunity and so that they could be homeowners, which is almost impossible to do unless you have some help. And I'm one of those people that has some help. Let me tell you what the people said in these little communities, like, oh no, I mean, I feel so bad for them that they don't have more income, and I wish everyone was able to afford to buy a home. And I couldn't imagine growing up in a neighborhood like that and so much poverty. But if they move in, then our home value is going to decrease. How many of them are you talking about letting come in? 1 or 2? Don't do more than 2, because anything more than 2 would just be, then our neighborhood is not valuable anymore. They would say things like that. Some of the same people who would go to those neighborhoods and they would participate in charity. They would donate clothes to people in those neighborhoods, canned goods, things like that, but they didn't want them in their neighborhood. You get where I'm going? They'll tell you that they're for gay rights. They'll tell you that they think everybody should have a decent education. They'll tell you that they think with the migrant situation, no, people shouldn't be in cages at the border. No, they should be able to just come here and stay here. I'm so glad Massachusetts is a sanctuary state. I'm so glad they're standing by that. They're for it and they support it until it comes next door to them, until it's in their backyard. And instead of just outwardly saying, I don't support it, I don't want to do it, they'll use covert racism as an excuse to push it out. This is one thing that I would say that I have noticed that is different about the conservatives with this opinion. At least they tell you to your face. The wealthy coastal elite liberals here will smile in your face, and then behind your back, they'll stab you in the back. They'll come up with lies and excuses to push you out as to why you can't be there. It's a problem. And if you live here, you know what I'm talking about. This is why I say it's not enough for people to tell me that they support something. It's not enough for you to tell me you support Medicare for all. My question is, are you willing to fight for it? And what I have learned about a lot of these elite liberals in these coastal communities, they're not willing to fight for it. Hell, they don't even want it next door to them. They're totally fine with it until it comes in their neighborhood. That's how it works. And they won't say that to your face. They'll say the things I just told you. Oh, we don't want too many of them. Oh, dear. Do we really want that many? Oh, the value of our homes will go down. It's a problem. So when I say this, because people see Massachusetts as like this progressive haven, it's not. It's progressive in theory, not necessarily progressive in practice. They're called NIMBYs, not in my backyard. So a lot of people were making excuses for the people in Martha's Vineyard. They're like, oh, they did the right thing. And well, what are they supposed to do? The woman said they don't have housing. None of those people live here. So it was interesting to me. But yet they were quick to defend them. Quick to defend. People say, well, I don't see the people in the red states offering to, do and did it. They weren't sent there. They were sent to Martha's Vineyard, which claims to be so welcoming and open, which claimed that, yes, we are proud to be a part of a sanctuary state. Yes, we will welcome them here. So then they get here, and it's 50 of them, by the way, 50 people. They're acting like 500 people showed up. So then they get here, and all of a sudden, well, I mean, we can't really, the resources deal with that. We can't really handle that. No, we don't have any housing. What are you talking about? There's hardly nobody there. It's a problem. So yes, I did have to talk about it. I did have to mention it because I do see both sides. Again, do I think this was a political stunt by Ron DeSantis? Absolutely. But you know what he did? He called their bluff. He called their bluff. He said, oh, okay, you say that you will welcome them? All right, I'm going to drop them off at your doorstep and let me see what happens. That's what happened. So they sent them to Cape Cod. I don't know what's going to happen from there. But let me be real here. This was a way of the residents at Martha's Vineyard to say, We are not going to have that in our town. And if you've ever been to Martha's Vineyard, you will know what I'm talking about. We can't have this influx of poor people here. Terrible. Terrible. The rich, white, coastal liberals. They like to point fingers at the conservatives. They'll point fingers at them and say, oh my God, kids in cages. Are they going to put the kids in the cages? No. Are they going to welcome the kids there? No. That's the problem. It is what it is. I had to call it like I see it. Let me go to some of the comments. Sweary Fairy, don't have or won't give. Bad cookies. We can't house them here, but there are some nice dumpsters in the next town over, right? Send the text. We can't expect the wealthy to be inconvenienced. I know, right? Oh God, we can't have them here. What would the appearances look like when tourist season comes back around? That's what that's about. Credit is born. Maslow's hierarchy of needs applies in the US only if you have cash. Thanks for the super chat, Gina. BLM signs hit different on Palo Alto mansions, right? That's right. And that's another thing. They would have these BLM signs in their window and whatever, man. Susan, Malcolm X was right.